Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
This is a catastrophe.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
That's what I wished for when I blew out my candle.
Locking down the middle of the day. Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
The floor is yours.
Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Wednesday. About half the work week in the rearview mirror. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. We're brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. Jordan Kitchens, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Got a lot to do. What Saints players could be on the trading block? We'll talk about it in 15 minutes. We got What If Wednesday coming your way at 1:30. There's a report now that Billy Napier may be done as early as Saturday night or Sunday afternoon. What does that mean for the Florida Gators? 2 o'clock, we're going to do something I'm kind of dreading. At 2 o'clock, we're going to go back to my preseason prediction column and check how that's going halfway through. You'll get the vibes, but we'll do that at 2 o'clock. J.D. Piquel, host of the Hard Count on 3 Sports at 2:15. And, of course, our SEC football power rankings at 2:30. Obviously, loaded shows. Let's crank it up the way we do every day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
So every single Tuesday, we interview LSU football players, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, and generally speaking, we're not aware of who we're going to get. They are very, very accommodating, and if there's somebody that you feel like you need to talk to, they will certainly take requests. They're not going to overload these guys with 4, 5, 6 visits in a row. You don't get Nussmeier every week. You don't get Whit Weeks every week. So they try to lighten the load on those guys, but they're accommodating. But generally speaking, I show up on Tuesday with no idea what 4 guys we're going to talk to. And last night, we showed up, and we found out Garrett Nussmeier was on the docket. Haven't talked to him in about a month. And I'll tell you this. Garrett Nussmeier is, generally speaking, a boring interview. That's not an indictment of him personally at all. He's a boring interview because he is intentionally a boring interview. He grew up in a coach's household. He understands the role of the media. He knows that his job is to make sure that he is propping up his players, not talk about himself, prop up the other team, avoid controversy, head down. And he does that. And that is perfectly within his purview. He can do that if he wants to, but I understand it. So I know when Garrett comes, you're probably not going to get a lot of fireworks. Now, he will absolutely cordially answer your questions, at times give it specific thought. And if you want to hear about a player on LSU's team, Garrett will give you a great answer. I'm going to write about P.J. Woodland later this week, and Garrett gave a great answer about P.J. Woodland. But you start talking about, rivalry matchups or whether or not he's hurt or if he needs to do this, like he's not going to go into deep water more often than not in front of a microphone. And so that's why I thought his tone yesterday and his message yesterday was very enlightening, because I did think he gave us some actual information to chew on. Some of it was indirect, and you'll hear it, but I thought that he gave us a little something to chew on here. So this first bite was in response to a reporter asking Garrett about Brian Kelly's comment on Monday that he played a little bit more free, played a little bit more swagger. Here's Garrett's response to Brian Kelly saying that.
Yeah, I think just for one, just everything that I was kind of going through in the first couple weeks was obviously very frustrating. And, I think I let it get to me a little bit, a feeling of helplessness at times, a lot of frustration. And so, now just having fun playing football, and trying to get back to that, just being me and playing the game that I love to play. And so I think I lost that for a minute there in frustration. And so, Coach challenged me with that to be myself and to bring that swagger back. So, I'm just going to continue to try and keep doing that.
So there he doesn't say, yes, I was hurt, right? He's not going to give you that soundbite, but he says, with everything that was going on earlier in the season. We know what was going on early in the season. Garrett was hurt. And he said it frustrated him. And that's a human reaction to a year that you came back for with massive expectation, where you're on Heisman Trophy odds lists and your team is mentioned with teams that compete for a national championship, and you're given the number 18 and you're sent to SEC Media Days to represent the team. And this is what you've worked your entire life for, to play quarterback at LSU one more year. And then you get hurt. That's frustrating. That is frustrating. And he said as much. Now, because he began that quote with everything that was going on, there was a natural follow-up with like, so you want to talk about your health, and here's what he said.
I think it's pretty obvious kind of what has gone on. You know, I don't want to go into it directly. You know, I'll say football, you're never truly fully healthy. You know, it's a sport that you have to play when you're banged up. You know, obviously it's been frustrating, but as I said, it's football. You know, you got to play through bangs and bruises. You know, I have no excuses. And so I'm just looking forward to continuing to try and get better and finish the year off the right way.
So he's not going to talk about it, but he talked about it. And this is going to be the million-dollar question as we sit here, and my job is to analyze the football team, right? And I try to be as truthful with y'all, as objective with y'all as I possibly can. You know where my rooting interest lies. I'm never going to run from that. I'm never going to hide from that. But I don't believe that it completely blinds my ability to analyze the football team. I can analyze the things that I know about. I know what LSU's running game has looked like for a month and a half. I know what LSU's defense has looked like for a month and a half. I now know how Brian Kelly kind of manages a team day to day and what his decisions look like in a game. I cannot know how Garrett Nussmeier felt at Clemson, how he felt in Oxford, how he feels today, how he's going to feel Saturday, what he'll feel like in November. I have no way of knowing that. And I can't know how many throws he's made have been affected by this injury and how many have not. So it's wasted energy for me to basically try to speculate on that. We just don't know. But we can go off what he's saying and then try our best with what you see on the field. And what you saw early in the season was floating deep balls and the inability to stretch the field and some kind of throws without a lot of zip and a quarterback that's not practicing, and it matters. So how much did the bye week and the rest help?
Yeah, it helped a lot for me, you know, being able to get a quick rest. And so, but, you know, as I said before, you know, just it's football. You got to play banged up. And so no matter what the situation is, you know, I'll go out there and give them all.
And we don't doubt that. The guy's tough. The guy wants to fight. He wants to play. We've seen him play through this injury early in the season. We saw him return from injury last year against Oklahoma and give it his best shot and hit some deep balls late in that game to Chris Hilton. He's tough. And he's going to play through this, and you hope that it continues to get better and better and better. And he thought, in talking to him yesterday, that the offense got better over the bye week pre-South Carolina. And he talked about some lessons that they learned in that game on Saturday night.
For us, coming off the field, it was a good lesson. You know, I think we completely dominated the game. You know, we dominated the line of scrimmage. We threw the ball at will. We were running the ball at will, and we messed it up on ourselves 3 times inside the 10, and we don't score. You know, in either of those opportunities. So we know how good we played. We know what we believe the score should have looked like. We know all this and that. And so, you know, at the end of the day, if we would have executed the small things and we would have put up, you know, those 3 scores or whatever, and the score would look totally different, there would have been a totally different conversation this week from the media, from everybody. You know, it would have looked like a totally different thing. And so we know that as a unit, and so it's a great learning lesson for us and how important it truly is, especially in big SEC games to finish.
I'm sensing some confidence from that. I was standing right there when he said it, and I just sense some confidence. You heard him say, we dominated the game. And I would suggest that's probably right. You ran for 160, which is way better than you've done at any point this year. You moved the ball essentially at will. I'm with you on that. Now, if you are in Columbia, South Carolina doing radio this week, you're talking about how the defense showed up when it had to and got a fumble at the 3-inch line and got a pick at the 1-yard line and stoned LSU at the goal line right there at the end to force the field goal. That's the way you're going to frame that. And if you're in Baton Rouge doing the radio, well, they just screw. And the truth of the matter is that those situations are all different. Juwan Johnson stretching the ball out at the goal line is a no-no. And it's an alert, aware play by the South Carolina defense to knock it free. That's coachable, pretty fixable. Don't do it again. That's not a problem with the offense. The pick that Nussmeier throws at the goal line is inexcusable for a fifth-year senior quarterback to make. And that's not something you can just brush away. Well, we got down there and turned it over at the 1. Like, no, you can't make that throw. And he knows that, but you got to do better than that. If you're going to beat Bama, if you're going to beat Texas A&M, if you're going to go to Norman and win, like, you can't make that throw. You probably can't make that throw on Saturday. So that is part of the offense where that's not something that you just shot yourself in the foot. You made a bad play. And then at the end of the game, yep, I'd like it if you could knock South Carolina out of the way, 1st and goal at the 1-yard line, and get in the end zone to finish the game. Finish the game. And they couldn't do it. Now, you're not going to do anything crazy down there because it going from 7 to 10 under 3 minutes to go is a massive deal when their offense has 10 points total in the game. So you're going to be a little bit conservative there, but I'd like, in a conservative mindset, to still punch that in from the 1 yard line, and they didn't. But I sense confidence from Garrett Nussmeier in that answer. And so this was the final answer that we'll play for you. And it's talking about getting back to himself, being himself, and playing well in the second half of the season.
Leading the offense the correct way, being the guy that can orchestrate this offense into what it truly has the potential to be. And so I think that's my goal, nothing else. I've said it many, many times, I didn't care about awards or things like that or focus on all this individual stuff. My goal was to be the best I could for the LSU Tigers and LSU offense. And so that's where my focus is. My focus is with my teammates, my focus with my coaches and getting better and trying to continue this. At the end of the day, you can say whatever you want about us, but we're 5-1 and we got a great opportunity ahead of us. And so that's my goal, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
The last part of that bite, I feel like, is lost in this town right now. That's my opinion. That's my experience. But the last part of that bite, in my opinion, is lost in this town right now. And we talked about it a little bit the first 2 days of this week, and I understand it, but I do push back against it a little bit. I push back against the town, not Garrett. The town, the refrain is, offensive line's no good still. Offense, no good still. When they play good teams, they're going to get beat. Kelly hasn't accomplished anything. They can't beat Bama. They're not going to beat A&M. Like, this is supposed to be a championship team, and it's not. And that's the chorus in this town. And that may be proven right. It may be proven right. But I know Garrett Nussmeier's right. I'm 100% certain that Garrett Nussmeier's right. He's 5-1. He's got a great opportunity moving forward. Look around at all the teams that have losses. Georgia's not perfect this year. Oregon just lost on its home field. Bama got beat by a Florida State team that stinks. Everybody's got their flaws. And I'm not here to suggest that LSU's playing significantly better than Oregon or Bama. They're not. But they're 5-1. I know that. And they do have a huge opportunity. And I'm just kind of wired in a way to think about that in addition to the struggles that they've had offensively. Trust me, I wrote in a post-game column on LouisianaSports.net after LSU beat Florida, this offense is not good enough to do what they need to do. I'm not completely blind to that. I'm not here to tell you, hey, this team is fine. They're 5-1. They got a great defense. They'll be fine. They're going to make the playoff. I'm not here to brush that away. But I'm also not going to dismiss the fact that they're 5-1 with a great opportunity here. You telling me they can't go to Nashville and win? They can. They can go beat Vanderbilt. That's 6-1. That sets up 105,000 when A&M comes in here for a primetime game. You don't think they can win that game? You sure they can't win that game? The opportunity's there. I'm just saying. And I felt like for a guy in Garrett Nussmeier who very rarely says anything when he sits down with a microphone, he sounded to me last night to be a guy who said, yeah, I was hurt. I'm not talking about it, but I was hurt. I'm not hurt. We dominated that game against South Carolina. And we got a good chance to get better now that I'm healthy and my running back's healthy and my tight end's healthy and we're 5-1 to do something in the second half. And if it looks like it did last year in the second half, they won't do anything. But that's not certainty. What's certain is that the quarterback's getting healthier. The body's going to heal itself. He's not getting worse. And that they're 5-1. Let's see what happens. I enjoyed our chat with Garrett Nussmeier. I've got a piece up at LouisianaSports.net right now with a couple more quotes, kind of my thoughts and commentary on it as well, so you can check that out for free over at LouisianaSports.net. If you want to look for our LSU content, you can find it at Hunt on LSU, YouTube, wherever you find your podcasts. We appreciate y'all for subscribing and making that part of your day. All right, What If Wednesday coming up in 15 minutes. Our Wednesday show is brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. When we come back, Ross Jackson, awesome piece on LouisianaSports.net about what Saints players could yield if they're dealt. I'll tell you who I think they should move on to, maybe who they need to keep around. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Safety, big issue in the bathroom, especially as folks age. If there is someone in your life who is aging, want to stay at home, but you feel like there might be a hazardous situation in the bathroom, well, do what you can to mitigate against that. You can't take that risk away, but you can do some things to help mitigate that risk. Non-slip floors, One Bath and Closets can do it. Guardrails, slippery places, One Bath and Closets can do it. Walk-in tubs, you betcha, One Bath and Closets can do it. Showers with benches, absolutely, One Bath and Closets can do it. Start with that free consultation. Talk to David Duvall about what he can do. Financing options are available, 0% up to 18 months. It's One Bath and Closets. You can find them online and get that consultation at onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools.
Wednesday shows brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools. Looking to get into that pool of your dreams for next summer. My guy, Joey Blanchard, has got you covered. Give him a call, 225-252-7745. Renaissance Homes and Pools. They bring you our Wednesday shows each and every week. Ross Jackson's got an awesome piece up at LouisianaSports.net. Just got a ton of information packed into it, more than I'm going to be able to get to in one segment here. But it's talking about the trade deadline approaching here on November the 4th. And you got about 3 weeks to get your ducks in a row if you're the Saints. And I think we now need to start questioning, like, we don't have to question if. Like, the Saints know where they are as an organization. You saw them trade an actual asset for a player that can't play this year in Ja'Kai Polk. Like, they traded for a guy that can't play this year. That tells you they got eyes on the future, right? So we don't have to ask whether or not the front office is even aware that this is a rebuild. And that was a reasonable question because of how the Saints had doubled down over the years and never fully admitted to, hey, we need to take a step back. You trade for a guy that can't play this year, you realize that you're taking a step back. So now you understand, and they did that with Marshawn Lattimore when they traded him away last year as well. Like, they have now made multiple moves that suggest they understand where they are. So now we can understand how to restock these shelves the best you can. And the best way, as we've talked about, to restart this thing is to get younger and cheaper. And the only way to do that is in the draft. You can do it to an extent with undrafted free agents. But trying to make a roster full of undrafted free agents is not going to go very well. Draft picks are cheap and they're young by definition. You've got to go ahead and get some draft capital in your organization. And so, what can you do with the guys that you currently have? And Ross lays it out by player. Starts with Chris Olave. We can probably agree he is the best young asset the Saints probably have. He's proven as a 1,000-yard receiver. He was a first-round pick. He had a terrible game on Sunday. Got it. He's not really a number one receiver. Got it. But he can play in the NFL. That is a proven fact. And so if you're a really good team that's looking for a 2, Chris Olave makes a ton of sense. But what can you get back for it? And Ross writes, a typical top-end wide receiver gets a second-round pick. The Bills traded Stephon Diggs, a 5th and 6th-round pick to Houston for a second-round pick. If you can get a second-round pick for Chris Olave, maybe in a little bit more, either some, like a pick swap, 6th and 7th round, something like that, like I would listen to that phone call because Chris Olave's had his 5th-year option picked up. He's a guy that's not going to cost a ton next year, but moving beyond that is going to be a little bit more expensive. I'm not saying kick him out the door for nothing, but I'm listening if you can get a second-round pick for Chris Olave. And keep in mind, let me just put a little caveat on this. If your take on the matter is, who cares what draft picks they got because Mickey Loomis and Ireland are clowns and they can't draft anybody. If that's your take, then this entire conversation is moot, and the Saints are not worth talking about until they're gone. But while those guys are employed, we're going to talk about the Saints. You got to take a practical approach here. If you can get a second-round pick and maybe a little bit more for Olave, I am absolutely interested in seeing what you can move on from him. We've talked about Rashid Shaheed. I think Rashid Shaheed has probably still got 3 to 4 years of really high-end NFL speed left in him. If he's a freak of nature like Ted Ginn, maybe you're talking about 5 more years of elite level speed, and that is his number one trait. But you can reach out and touch his 30th birthday. So you feel like that doesn't last forever. But he's certainly got high end speed right now. And if you are a team that's lacking a deep threat, there's probably not a better one on the market today. Because if you look back over the last 5 years, the only player that has had more explosive receptions than Rashid Shaheed in the entire National Football League is Tyreek Hill, and he's in the hospital. So this is the guy. He's the top of the market. If somebody's got to have what he's got, I'll listen. And as Ross writes, the valuation's a little bit different. He's set to become an unrestricted free agent after this season. So in that term, you're looking at a rental. This is a rental. That's a Major League Baseball term, but it applies here. You're talking about a guy that you're only going to get half a season out of unless you extend that contract. So the Saints are going to get a compensatory pick if they extend that offer. They will. So do you want to move on for something concrete right now or see how the free agency process plays with Shaheed? This is one of those deals where it's tough to analyze on the front end because you don't know what the value is potentially coming back. But if you can get a day 2 pick, which I don't think you could, but if you could get a day 2 pick, I would be interested in that. I'm not, again, another guy I'm not kicking out the door, but okay. Now, Brandon Cooks is the third piece to this puzzle here. And this is a guy I would kick out the door. That's nothing against Brandon Cooks, but he's old. He's 32. And I don't have any use for him on the next really good Saints team. So if there is any sort of asset that you can grab for Brandon Cooks, I am all ears. 6th-round pick, yep, I'll take it. I don't see a spot for Brandon Cooks moving forward on the roster, which means any asset you get back for Brandon Cooks, I would absolutely take. He's been healthy after a year last year where he was banged up, so that's a feather in your cap as the Saints. If you could get a day 3 pick, some sort of pick swap, absolutely bring it on as far as that goes. Pete Werner. Pete Werner plays a position that generally doesn't net a lot on the trade market. He's an inside backer. As Ross writes, in 2023, Isaiah Simmons got moved for a 2024 7th-round pick. Last year, Ernest Jones II got moved on for a 6th-round pick to a 5th-round pick swap. Kenneth Murray got sent to the Cowboys, allowing the Tennessee Titans to get a 7th-round pick. If you trade Werner, you're probably talking about a 7th-round pick. It's something. Am I just dying to get that done? I just don't think that's a significant needle mover to me. I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking about it. Werner's been a very much replacement level linebacker for the Saints. Has some days where you're like, oh, that guy, decent day. And you have some days where you're like, this guy can't cover a soul, whatever. I'm not too been out of shape about the Pete Werner situation. Now, Carl Granderson's interesting. He's the most productive player you've got on defense thus far this season. He's got 4.5 sacks through 6 games. He plays a premium position. You could get a lot for Carl Granderson. You could get maybe a day 2 selection. Maybe. Chase Young was picked up by San Francisco for a 3rd-round pick. Granderson's probably, this is a guess on my part, obviously, probably his best football's behind him, but he's not over the hill. Like, this is not a guy who's well past his prime. His production right now is suggesting that he's playing good football. He's 28. You can rush the passer at 30. So I'm not desperate to move on from Carl Granderson, but unlike Werner, you're talking about a guy in Carl Granderson who plays a premium position, and you might be able to get a team maybe that's dealing with an injury, maybe that feels like that's the missing piece to overextend. And if, for goodness sakes, if you can pull up to a 2nd-round pick, I'm all over it. I don't think that's realistic, but 3rd-round pick, I'm listening. I'm listening. When you got a guy that's 28 years old, I'm listening. Now, Cam Jordan and Kamara are the last 2 pieces to this puzzle. They are Saints lifers. They're at the end of their rope from an NFL perspective. Cam Jordan probably closer to the end than Kamara. It appears to me that the front office has gone to those 2 guys, and those 2 guys suggested they don't want to be traded. This is going to be unpopular with Saints fans when I'm saying this, but I believe this. I have a duty, if I'm Mickey Loomis in this front office, to do what's in the best interest of the Saints, not shine a spotlight on the twilight of a great Saints career. If there is some sort of return for those guys, it is a dereliction of duty not to answer the phone. Say, can't touch him. Cam's had a lot of sacks for the Saints. He's going in the Hall of Fame one day. We can't get rid of him because he was really good 5 years ago. Kamara, most touchdowns in Saints history. I can't trade that. Yes, you can. You can. And I don't believe that Cam Jordan commands almost any return. And so I don't think that this is going to be a conversation worth having. Kamara might. He's not going to be somebody's lead back, I don't think, but he can help in your backfield. And he's a great clubhouse locker room guy. But I'm not willing to suggest that because you were super productive for the Saints in 2018 that you are untradeable out of respect in 2025. Again, that's not going to be popular with Saints fans, and I understand it. But the Saints are in a hole, and they've got to do whatever they can to get out of it. And if that means you move on from a defensive end at the end of his career, like I'm not just going to hold up because things were great 5 years ago. So to me, I don't think Cam Jordan and Kamara move because I don't think they command a lot in trade value and they want to stay, and I believe that the front office will keep them there. I don't think Carl Granderson will move, even though I think they'll probably take some phone calls. I don't think Warner moves. Cooks, proven pro, vet, need a number 3 receiver because somebody got hurt and you're a contender. Absolutely, and it won't cost a lot for teams to get him, and the Saints can take whatever they can for him. I think Olave and Shaheed are very, very fascinating. I would absolutely be open and willing to trade either one of them if the return is good enough, and I think Olave's would be the best, and I'd be willing to move on from him. That's my thought on this entire matter. We've got 3 weeks to chop it up, but hopefully the Saints are able to recoup some draft assets, and then they can use that to try to land more young, affordable players on next year's roster. Appreciate Ross Jackson for putting that up at LouisianaSports.net. You can read it for free along with his thoughts, and you can find our stuff, Hunt on Saints, wherever you find your podcasts. All right, let me tell you about Renaissance Homes and Pools, a little bit of an extended read here. Look, summer's over. Got cooler temps that are coming in. Pool time, about done, right? But make sure that if you went through this summer without a pool and you hated that and really want to get into that pool of your dreams, Joey Blanchard and his team at Renaissance Homes and Pools are happy to help you make that a reality. It starts with a consultation with the owner of the company, Joey Blanchard. He walks you through the process. Their design software is phenomenal. To scale, you can see just exactly what that pool is going to look like. You want big resort style? They got you. You want small cocktail? They got you. No matter what size and scope you're dealing with, Renaissance Homes and Pools can do it for you. When they dig that pool, Joey will be there. When they fill that pool, Joey will be there. When they finish that pool, Joey will be there. He's the owner. He's invested. He's done it for dozens and dozens and dozens of families around the Baton Rouge area, and you could be next. So go to builtbyrenaissance.com or call Joey directly, 225-252-7745. That's 225-252-7745. Renaissance Homes and Pools.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools.
Moving right along here on this Wednesday, a lot to pack up over the last hour and a half of this show. We're going to talk about Billy Napier potentially getting fired. We got to go back to my August predictions. Had 3 of them, 3 bold predictions for this LSU football team. We'll see how that's going halfway through the schedule. J.D. Pickell is going to be with us at 2:15 every single week now moving forward. We got our SEC football power rankings that we'll do coming up at 2:30 as well. Got a new team at the top spot of said power rankings, so we'll do those in about 55 minutes from this moment in time. But right now, it's What If Wednesday.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities. Follow me and ponder the question, what if?
All right, let's kick this bad boy off, Hunt. So, what if Penn State calls Clark Lee?
He's got to answer the phone. I understand home is home. I really do.
Yes.
But sometimes you understand what opportunity is calling. Now, it depends on what motivates Clark Lee. If Clark Lee is motivated by reaching the pinnacle of the sport, by winning national championships, being annually relevant in the college football playoff, he will pursue that opportunity if it comes up, because there's no question that Penn State is significantly better opportunity there. However, you do have to understand that James Franklin won a ton of games at Penn State. He went to the Rose Bowl. He won the Big Ten. He had him in the college football playoff and won 2 games. And he had bad 2 weeks, and they fired him. And now he's got to look for the next opportunity. If you're happy recruiting, coaching players, winning some games, keeping your job, living in Nashville, then Vanderbilt's a great job, because they would have thrown a freaking party for Clark Lee last year. They went 7-6. 7-6, throwing a party. So he's got to take the phone call. One thing I can't know for sure is whether or not Clark Lee is telling the truth when he says he believes that he can build Vanderbilt into national power. If he's delusional in that way, that's a tough thing to shake free from. If he just says that because you have to say that when you're the head coach at Vanderbilt, well, then you can take the job at Penn State. But I think that would be a really good phone call for Penn State to make. I think that he should take that job if it's offered. But home is home. However, look, John Cohen was the athletic director at Mississippi State, where he went to college, and Auburn called, and he left in 2 seconds. So some people realize, what's a better opportunity, and I would think Clark Lee would look at that.
Yeah, and sometimes the grass isn't always greener, so he's got to watch out. So what if I hate this one? What if Notre Dame wins out? I'm a Notre Dame hater.
Puts them at 10-2 with one reasonably good win over Southern Cal. Yeah. Because Southern Cal played really well against a mediocre Michigan team last week, and you'll get a little bit of credit for that. Nothing else on the schedule gets any credit at all. And you lost 2 games. You lost to Texas A&M. You lost to Miami. Now, they were close losses. Yeah. But until someone proves this theory wrong, I'm going to believe it is so. I believe the College Football Playoff Committee does not care who you beat nor who you lose to. They only care how many games you lose. And by that criteria, Notre Dame at 10-2 is going to look pretty attractive. Now, they didn't beat anybody, and they did lose, but I think they got a chance to get in if they go 10-2. I do.
I do too, and that's why I hate it so much. Oh, I know you love this one. What if the Brewers get swept by the Dodgers?
I would prefer the Dodgers win.
I know.
I despise the Brewers. But here is something that I try to live by. Okay. Now, keep in mind, you're talking to someone who on Saturday nights after LSU, my work is done with LSU, I go back and listen to podcasts and watch videos and press conferences of the teams that lost. Because there is something in you that like revels in the failures of your rivals.
You're a real hater.
However, I have to say this, and there may be some hypocrisy in this, but it's just the way I'm not in a position as a Cubs fan who was just beaten by the Brewers to then turn around and point and laugh at you who just beat me. Now, keep in mind, if you're a college football team and you're 8-0 and your rival's getting their teeth kicked in, you can point and laugh from a position of authority there. But if you've already been beaten and then you're celebrating the failures of a team that accomplished more than you, then all of a sudden you're like an A&M fan, you're like an Ole Miss fan who doesn't have anything to celebrate personally. They just want to go after you from their spot in anonymity. And the Cubs are in anonymity. They're playing golf right now. Yeah. So I can't celebrate in good conscience the Brewers while I'm anonymous and irrelevant. That's something that loser fan bases do. Damn. I can do it in the privacy of my own home with the grin on my face. I'm not going to go out and publicly bang the drum because I think that's loser behavior. And the Cubs lost last weekend. So by definition, they're losers.
I can't debate. I have nothing to say because I was one of those people that was waiting for Ole Miss to lose so I could spin back around and be like, hey, look at y'all. So you exposed me. You got me right there. I can't even say nothing right there. So
there you go.
What if – I like this one, actually. What if Zion plays 75 games?
If Zion plays 75 games, you'll get a real sense of where the Pelicans franchise is.
Yeah.
You get no sense of where the franchise is when none of their good players play.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to diagnose that. So I will say, if he plays 75 games, I think the Pelicans will avoid the play-in. I think they are legitimately and actually a playoff team.
I like this a lot.
But I don't think he's played 75 games. So I want you to answer the question.
Okay.
Whatever you want. You can say how many games they'll win. You can say, what if he plays 75 games? Like, what's your reaction to that?
All right, well, look, I'll say this. If Zion plays 75 games, I'm willing to put my life on the line that the Pelicans will make the playoffs. I'm not going to go all the way, be a 6 seed, playing. You'll be in the mix. I'm willing to say this, though. If Zion plays, because 65 games is like the minimum you get to be in awards and all that. So if he plays 75, I'm super, 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 super confident that he will be in MVP discussions. Might not win it, but his name will be one of the names in the hat. And I think you will, like you said, you'll finally get a true sense of where we are. We're year 6, 7 in this, and we don't know what we have yet. You're still just begging him to be on the court. But I will say this: it's not just about Zion. Trey Murphy has to play 65 games, over 65. We'll take 75, but he has to play over 65.
75's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot.
75.
Yeah, but 65, we'll say that. If Trey, he has to play 65. Herb Jones has to play over 65. Like, it can't just be him. It's a team, so he has to be there. He's the engine, but you need the wheels too. You can't just have an engine and no wheels. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
How many games do you think Zion's going to play?
Well, I'll say he's gonna play over 65 this year. I'm willing to say that because the next 2 years on his contract are non-guaranteed because he has to meet the games play requirement to get that money. Money is the motivation for everybody, so I think he will play over 65 games this year. Might not be 75, but I'll say between 65 and 70, that's what Zion will play. Probably 66. He'll probably just get one more, and he's done.
All right. That's What If Wednesday. Got my guy Troller McTroll87 in the chat. Says the Cubs are a loser fan base, though. I would get offended by that a little bit. Probably not a lot, but a little bit if your username wasn't Troller McTroll.
Yeah. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing.
I'm optimistic about the immediate future of the Cubs. Got to figure some things out in the offseason, but I had fun watching the Cubs in the playoffs this year. I have not done that in a long time. Yeah. It was fun. It was heartbreaking at the end, as it always is for every team but one. But it was I had so much fun watching the Cubs. I've caught myself on Thursday of last week. Now, the Cubs played really well on Thursday of last week, but I caught myself that night just looking up at the TV with Wrigley full, ivy on the wall, the Cubs in the gorgeous pinstripe uniforms, like playing well. Like I was just like, this is just freaking awesome. They play so many games that individually feel like they don't matter. You play 162, you lose on Thursday, like whatever, 120 game on Friday, whatever. That once you get to the ones that feel so impactful or do or die, it's a lot of fun. So we'll see. Troller McTrollerson, Troller McTroll87, if that's the case. So you're going to be news out of Gainesville coming up on Saturday or Sunday. There's a report that there just might be. We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. Jonathan Carver and his team, they're just experts when it comes to the coverage aspect of insurance. If you've always just kind of gone with the cheapest option, that's one way to handle your insurance. Certainly is. But have you considered the other way to handle it? And let me tell you, the Highland Insurance Group is going to be sure that your premium is what it needs to be. They're going to go to their dozens of contracted carriers and make sure that you're competitively priced. But they're also, in that process, going to make sure that your coverage is right. Because you never know when the hurricane's coming. You don't know when the car accident's going to happen, when that lawsuit's coming, the cyber attack's happening. Those things can derail a business financially if they're not taken care of on the front end with insurance. So if your concern is chiefly coverage, understanding that price is important as opposed to vice versa, Highland Insurance Group is who you need to work with. Have them audit your policy for free, especially if you're a 1/1 renewal coming up January 1st. Talk to the Highland Insurance Group today. Reach out. They're here in Baton Rouge. You can find them at HighlandIG.com and say, hey, love to get a second set of eyes on my renewal. They are happy to help you with that. Commercial insurance, the Highland Insurance Group, online, HighlandIG.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Renaissance Homes and Pools.
Wrapping up hour number one here, Matt Hayes, who's with USA Today, has got a story up today that is titled "Embattled Florida Coach Billy Napier Could Be Fired as Soon as This Weekend." I don't know that that's breaking news. Florida's not had a good year, and this is year 4 for Billy Napier. But you read the story. It says that Florida Athletic Director Scott Strickland met with a handful of influential boosters on Tuesday and was told continuing financial support depends on the new direction within the football program. 3 people with direct knowledge of the situation told USA Today Sports. Scott Strickland declined comment for the story. This is something that I've never fully understood, and I realize that that's like it's an interesting way for me to go about things, to suggest it's something that I'm in the middle of. Journalism, I write for the website. Like, I don't understand how this story could get written. But if I'm reading tea leaves correctly, and I'm just reading tea leaves here from Matt's story, it suggests that Scott Strickland talked to the money people at Florida, and then Matt Hayes got wind of it and called money people at Florida who said, yeah, we met. We're waiting to fire Billy on Sunday. Write it up in USA Today. That seems like such a ridiculous thing for the money people to do, if that's the case. To me, anyone who has knowledge of that plan and directly tells a newspaper reporter to print that, that seems crazy to me. What message does that send to the players at Florida who are now probably going to have to deal with questions about this? They're certainly going to see it. Like, Billy Napier gets paid a lot of money, and he hasn't won nearly enough football games. But if I'm an influential booster who Scott Strickland calls in and says, hey, you understand what's going on here? Next time we lose a game, we're probably going to have to move on. And I've got this money, and they ask for this, and I go, yeah, we'll do that. And then USA Today calls and says, hey, y'all firing Billy on Sunday if you can't win this game? Like, can I write that? Oh, yeah, we met on Tuesday. And Strickland asked us if we had the money. We have it. Go ahead and run that. Huh? Who are these people? I don't understand how that works. I guess some people like to gossip, like to feel like they're in control. I understand that losing football games creates animus between people, and maybe there are boosters that just don't like Billy Napier because he doesn't win enough. But, like, you're just steamrolling your own football program. You're turning the football program into a punchline. And I guess you could come back and retort to me, hey, we're a punchline if we can't beat South Florida at home. I don't have a good answer for you there either. But maybe just write the checks and don't talk to the newspaper guys would be my... And look, I'm a writer. There are times where I make phone calls and say, hey, what's the deal with this? But there are some things that I just don't understand why the information shows up. And I just think it's unfair to the players at Florida who now have, 3 days before a game, you've got an article written that says, hey, your coach is getting fired on Sunday. Go play. These guys didn't sign up for that. But it'll be interesting to see what Florida can do once Napier is let go. It also cranks up the hiring carousel. You're talking about Penn State is in the job market. Florida is going to be in the job market. Florida State might be in the job market. Those are probably the biggest fish at this point that are going to be looking for a coach. But that's always relevant. I told you a lot. Like, I don't care what Brian Kelly does relative to Billy Napier because they were hired in the same cycle. I think once you land that job, the expectation is the expectation. The expectation at West Virginia is one thing. The expectation at LSU is another thing. The expectation at Michigan is one thing, and the expectation at Wisconsin is another. And so what you do relative to the coaches that were hired in your carousel, I don't care about. I do care about who's trying to hire coaches while you're hiring a coach, because you do have to judge yourself and make moves based on who else you could be competing with at that point in time. we understand how things went with LSU in Texas and Tom Herman back when that decision was made in 2016. It matters. So Penn State and Florida are going to be in the mix. I think Florida State's got a good chance of being in the mix. And we'll see what happens at Auburn. We'll see what happens at some other places that can make people think. But sounds like Florida, the next time they lose a football game, going to be officially in the market for a head coach. And it's just kind of a weird thing that a newspaper reporter could get that information out of someone who knows. I don't know what the person who knows that information that is giving it to the reporter gets out of that conversation, but guess that's just the way it goes. That's it for hour number 1 here, Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. When we come back, got a lot to get to in hour 2, including J.D. Piquel of On 3 Sports. We'll pause for Sports Center. We'll be back after.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every car that's on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. You may never have been behind the wheel of a Genesis. Odds are you have not. You can test drive that. You can do it at the dealership, airline at PQ. Always a great time to do it. Or they'll come to you. If that's not exactly what you want to do and you'd really rather get behind the wheel for more than just a little test drive, rentals are available. You've got a family road trip coming up for Thanksgiving. You've got a road trip coming up to a football game. You've got something coming up where you've got to get on the road and you don't want to put those miles on your current vehicle, but you'd like to see how the Genesis drives. Highly recommend getting by and doing a rental. It's not something they do a ton of there, but they are happy to let you get behind the wheel. So go see them, airline at PQ. Again, the entire inventory is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Sedans all the way through the SUV, and all of them are IIHA top safety picks, some of the safest cars on the road. Find them online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com.